Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized by Weuni in partnership with Syracuse University. My name is Federica. Nice to meet you all, and I'll be your host for today's webinar on behalf of Weuni. I see here that the first people are just starting to join in, so we're going to wait just a few seconds before starting to allow everyone to connect. In the meantime, feel free to say hi here on our chat, here on Zoom, and please tell us where are you from, because we are very curious. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining us and thank to our panelists for being here with us today. And as you can see here, I'm not alone. So it's a pleasure to introduce you to Shri Ramakrishnan, Assistant Director and Graduate Recruitment, and James Coleman, Consulting Manager at Procurability and specializing in procurement and supply chain. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Today, we are going to discover what comes after an MBA, what it takes to transition from an MBA to a successful career in procurement, supply chain, and beyond. James will share with us his career journey in procurement and supply chain. And you are going to discover how Syracuse University can equip you with all the skills and network that you need for a long-term success. You'll also have the possibility to interact with our speakers and ask them all the questions that you have in mind. Talking about that, I'd like to remind you that after the presentation, we will have our Q&A session where you will be able to ask direct questions to our hosts. And so don't be shy and just type all type of question that comes up in your mind. And we will go through them at the end of this webinar. Also, for those of you that are interested in receiving a certificate of attendance from Weuni for this masterclass, stay tuned because we will share the link to get the certificate in the box at the end of the session. So I think that we are able to start. So welcome again to those who just joined us. And without further ado, and now I'm leaving the floor to our panelists for their presentation. So enjoy the webinar and see you later.
Federica, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to partner with Talk City for yet another webinar to feature one of our very recent alumni from the Whitman School of Management MBA program. So Jim Coleman. Jimmy, it's good to see you, but the sad thing is that we live in the same city and this is how we're getting to meet.
Yeah, likewise, Shri. It's great to
Yeah.
connect with you.
So thanks for taking the time for joining me today to talk a little bit about your journey. But I wanted to give a very brief intro, which is that you used to be one of our former graduate students and also assisted us for a while in the Master's Programs Office at the Whitman School of Management, Syracuse University. But you have a history with Syracuse University. You're a forever Orange. Forever Orange candidate, individual. You embody the spirit. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your journey at SU.
Sure. Yeah. So I did both my undergraduate and master's at Syracuse. I looked at a number of schools when I was coming out of high school, looking at undergraduate programs, and I visited SU one time and stopped my search right then and there.
But you're originally not from Syracuse. You're from further up.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, central Connecticut. So about a 4.5 hour drive from where I'm from.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed my time at SU. I was not in Whitman in undergrad. I was in VPA, College of Visual and Performing Arts, which pretty shortly after enrolling and getting started, I kind of realized was a mistake. I really wanted to be in Whitman and did whatever I could to kind of structure my curriculum in a way that would allow me to take as many elective courses through the Whitman School as possible. But like I said, I had a great experience in undergrad. actually, my first job coming out of undergrad, I got through Whitman. I think I had shared this with you earlier, Shri. I snuck into a career fair that I was not supposed to be at.
Let's
Um,
let's hold that thought for a second because I think I want to provide additional context with regard
sure.
to how that became possible for you and why it was even allowed in a way, because your program in undergrad was related to music business. It's the Bandier Music
Mhm.
Business Program.
Mhm.
So there was the, for those who are, hearing about it for the first time, of course, it's more related to uh, becoming a professional in the recording and music industry for entertainment, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I thought I wanted to be in publishing or licensing, which, is a very interesting industry, really interesting business. Um, and
But
there
it
was a
just
lot
didn't
of
suit
crossover.
your particular preference at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And through that program, I was able to take a lot of Whitman courses.
Exactly.
I got a minor in entrepreneurship and emerging enterprises.
Yeah.
So I was involved in Whitman programs.
Because I
My
think the
my
program
major,
itself is designed such that it has courses from not just the performing arts or like with music, but it's also tied in with course offerings from Whitman.
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so that gave you a little bit of intro to Whitman, and then you decided that's where you want to be hold for the rest
Yeah.
of your time. And so okay, so moving on, you did your minor with us in entrepreneurship, and so now let's go back to the career fair story where you snuck
Yeah,
into a
so
fair.
there was an exclusive career fair for Whitman majors
Hmm.
that I caught wind of, and I showed up, and I was kind of able to sweet talk my way in the door, and it ended up being a great thing for me. Like we had kind of mentioned, y- you know, I pretty quickly realized that the music business was not for me. It's not something I was super interested in, as far as like the career trajectory went and everything. So I wanted to pivot, and Whitman seemed like a good way to do that. So through that career fair, I got connected with a company in the chemical manufacturing industry. Something I really knew nothing about at the time, was probably not super well equipped for, but I talked with them, got an interview, and got the job. So I went to work for them in Florham Park, New Jersey, shortly thereafter, following undergraduate. And that sort of set me on the track that I'm on today, and ultimately led me back to Whitman for my MBA.
So how long were you working with them? 4 years?
Uh, I was there for a little over 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
Um, I had a couple different roles, primarily within the supply chain organization. So I started in procurement, and then I pivoted into more of a kind of a product management type role. And it's
Hmm.
not product in the sense of, you think of like in software where you're developing features and
Hmm.
stuff. Product in that business is much more about uh, you're kind of overseeing the book of business for your portfolio. So
Hmm.
it's, sales allocation, distribution, pricing models, things like that, but still
Hmm.
working very closely in tandem with the supply chain org, because you're responsible for supply and demand, basically.
Hmm.
And then from there, I did do a brief stint in software as a product manager as well, before ultimately deciding that, I not super interested in the software stuff. I liked what I was doing on the supply chain side of the house in industry. I started thinking, how can I get back into that? What can I do to set myself up for success and kind of pivot again? Um, so I got back in touch with Alex McKelvey, the dean of the
Hmm.
program, and he recommended, I was looking at online MBA programs, and he's the one who suggested, I at least consider going full time. So the more I
Yeah.
got talking with him, and the prospect of being able to return to SU was really attractive to me. So I took the GMAT, and I don't know, 6 months later, I was back on campus as a full-time MBA student.
It's just that orange power, we know it's your favorite color.
Yeah.
So that's great. So you started the program full-time in 2019.
Yes.
And then we know what happened the year following that.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't name it by now at this time. We're keeping the good vibe here. So 2019, when you started in the fall, you had been out for a short period of time, working and then coming back as a student. So one of the questions I usually get from, talking with students who've been out for a while or even early career candidates is something like, I don't know, how will I manage my time? Like, I'm bored initially, but do I have to take these exams? Do I have to do these assignments? What was your thinking, and what would be some sort of like guidance you would offer to, people coming out from industry back into the classroom?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird transition, right? Going back to school, I think at the time at least the time I entered my master's program, I was in a state of mind where I was really looking forward to it. I was, ready, willing, and able to kind of squeeze every drop of value I could out of it, which is not necessarily, how I felt or behaved in undergrad, And I think, um, it's a big deal. It's a big commitment. And the way I looked at it is, the MBA or the master's program, it's really kind of up to you to sort of leverage it for, for your own good, your own success. So like coursework is great. The programs, the networking, everything that school offers you is fantastic. But if you're not willing to kind of get creative and figure out how you can sort of parlay all of that into building a really good story and a really strong, resume essentially for yourself, then it's all for nothing. So, I went in with the mindset of like, I'm really going to grab this by the horns and kind of, I tried to like almost make my own rules a little bit. I definitely like went outside the lines and outside the bounds of like what the fixed program was, and it's all in the name of like really structuring the program to suit your needs. And I think Whitman was a great place to do that for me. I had a lot of flexibility, a really broad, kind of diverse package of courses that were available that you can sort of choose from. And, ultimately, and even outside of the classroom, there's a lot that I was able to involve myself in that really kind of allowed me to, achieve everything I wanted to, through the MBA.
So do you have any particular classes that come to mind that you think you really enjoyed or you found very challenging and did not particularly enjoy as a student?
Yeah, I mean, there's the faculty at Whitman are fantastic. I'll say that. I don't think I can think of a single class or professor that I did not like. Some were definitely more challenging for me than others. I really, really enjoyed the supply chain curriculum, especially when you get into like the supply chain theory, statistical analyses, all of this stuff that I didn't really have a ton of exposure to in undergrad, or in kind of like my entry level in the first few jobs I had before coming back. So like I can't remember the names of the courses, but like Professor Wu, everything he taught, I found fascinating. Or wrongly, her management science courses were, it's really technical stuff, and seeing it for the first time was pretty mind blowing to me. But having some experience beforehand, it really gets your wheels spinning of like, oh, I can really easily see how this can be implemented and put into practice in an actual business setting. And that's the way my mind works. I had a focus in supply chain and business analytics. So that's really where I sort of dove in head first. A lot of the finance courses were pretty challenging for me. I did my best and still did well, but it's, ultimately not necessarily something that I was super interested in, but, still important nonetheless. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess like overall, like I don't think I had any classes that I would say were for nothing or that I didn't like. I found all of the curriculum valuable. Oh, one other I wanted to mention too was anything Barack Kazaz taught was fantastic. So a lot of really interesting coursework really focused on like real world case study application. That's what at least the supply chain department was like really good at doing that. And it kept it all tangible in perspective. It's not just like textbook theory. It's like here's real concrete examples of how this has been put into practice successfully, unsuccessfully, et cetera.
It's just such a joy to watch you to talk about, your interest in supply chain and how much that really speaks with you. Because if you recall, Whitman's first flagship specialization offering was supply chain management. And then we diversified from after that. So it's such a joy to see you really immersed in that and make that connection. So going back to your specialization, yes. So the program itself, it is flexible because there is a core component of classes where you touch upon all aspects of business and management, right? And foundations. And then you get to choose your own specialization interests. And I think we all know now where you went and how you are continuing in that direction. But it's an important point that you made earlier that I wanted to reiterate, which is that you said you took finance classes, for instance, which were, they were required, whatever were as part of the core, but you didn't find any course. They were challenging, but it was not useful.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you tie that in general, even though you are not necessarily a finance manager, but in your current role, how do you tie in your knowledge and understanding of general aspects of business, that comes from doing an MBA?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's really tangible examples of that even in supply chain. So a lot of what we do as supply chain managers, as procurement managers, is all geared towards value creation, right? So historically, supply chain departments or procurement departments has operated as cost centers within organizations, kind of more of a tactical function. That's changing fast, dramatically, where it's being leveraged as much more of a strategic function, in some cases, even a profit center in terms of services and things like that you can offer. So the reason I bring that up is because, say you're working in a manufacturer, you make widgets, right? And your job is to optimize the flow of materials, save money on material, whatever it might be. If you don't have a foundational understanding of what makes those finished goods profitable, what are the KPIs or the goals of the organization, how is what you're doing on a daily basis helping that bottom line revenue, increasing value for shareholders, or whatever it might be. Like you need to understand how that works to be effective in your role, because without it, you sort of lose sight of what the overall objective is. So, having that kind of financial foundation, a lot of people think, procurement, supply chain, it's just about savings, just about cost savings. But that's not necessarily true. You can generate value in a lot of different ways that still have positive impact on that, top line or bottom line revenue. And that's where sort of the financial piece comes into play.
Okay, great. So from that, you did 1 year, and now let's touch upon the year that we didn't want to talk about. So you had 1 year of a full-time student experience at Whitman, and then it was the summer. So you did fall and spring, and then it was summer of 2020, and you had an internship.
Yeah. So it was kind of an interesting thing because like we call it an internship, but realistically, like I worked full time at this company for almost 2 years while I was in school. And the reason I was able to do that was sort of because of the dynamic shift in how we were, delivering the program due to
Exactly.
the shift to remote work and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I kind of networked and, got it through sort of cold messaging on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. And it was great. I was working in more of like a kind of like a hybrid supply chain analyst slash strategic sourcing type role for a local Syracuse company who's doing very well, by the way. They have their name on a very famous building at SU, the JMA Dome. But yeah, I mean, I worked there full time through the summer, and it was just supposed to be those couple months. But with the way things changed, the way I was able to structure my curriculum, I mean, I was able to stay on board through the entirety of my second year of the MBA. And in my last semester, I was actually able to get I forget what they called it, but it was set up as almost like a work study kind of thing. I got credit.
Co-op kind of
Yeah, like a
thing.
co-op
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
situation. So
Yeah.
I was able to leverage it as an elective as well. So it was great. I mean, it did nothing but supplement my curriculum. It was like a net add to the program. It was a lot of work. I wouldn't say that it's for everybody. But I was feeling pretty comfortable in the MBA. I knew the city of Syracuse, like everything sort of worked out really well for me. And
Sort of aligned for you because it also allowed with the complete virtual pivot for coursework.
Yeah, absolutely. And it
Yeah.
kind of goes back to like my mindset at the start of it. Like I was very willing to just put my head down and grind out those 2 years and do everything I could to set myself up for success. So I moved as much of my coursework to evenings as I could. I worked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, at that company. And they were flexible enough with me to allow me to, if I had to step out during the day to go to class or something, I could. They weren't paying me a whole lot, so they didn't really care. But because of that virtual pivot, it afforded me that opportunity when otherwise, I might not have had the chance to do something like that.
But sometimes ROI, which is usually tossed around, return on investment, can be measured, quantifiable, or it can be qualitative. Yeah. So I think in your case, it was a combination.
It absolutely was. I mean, you want to talk about ROI,
Yeah, let's touch upon what you think is the ROI that you received just with your whole Whitman MBA education. I mean, there's a separate level with SU, right? And ROI with SU, but then also specific to Whitman MBA.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Coming out of undergrad, I was happy to have a job. And I was happy to get a job through Whitman because from a comp perspective, it was much more attractive than anything coming out of the Bandier program. What my other
well, but that was also not your interest anyway for a career. It wasn't an interest for a career.
Yeah. And I would say, I still talk with some of my cohort from the MBA, and everybody kind of landed in a different place a little bit. But I guess without giving specifics, where I'm at today post MBA is more than 3x what I was making coming into the program. So I mean, it's from an ROI standpoint, 100%, no doubt about it. It was worth it for me, very valuable experience. And again, I'll reiterate, I can't stress enough, like how much of that was kind of like up to you as the student. It was up to me because like you can go through the motions, you could go through the program, you'll land a good job, and that's great. But it's really on you to like, again, squeeze every last drop of value out of that MBA as you possibly can.
Yeah. So there have been a lot of innovations now and other things that are offered at the program, which I'm pretty sure if you had been there at this time, uh, our my colleague Jenny, who you know very well, will probably be signing you up for a lot of things because you would have put down your name for a lot of those.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's contrast a little bit with respect to student life activities, because you had the benefit, and this was the unique experience that you had, where you were able to experience student life 1 year in person on campus within the master's program, right, at MBA. Weren't you part of the Whitman Graduate Student Organization? Weren't you the president?
I was president of the WGSO. Yeah.
There you
And,
go.
the second year, so it was my second year when I became president, there wasn't a whole lot for us to do.
Yeah, because that's when you pivoted into virtual
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you
But
could
it
be
was
on
still, I mean,
campus.
we were able to enjoy ourselves, I mean, I had a great relationship with everyone in my cohort. And even once we were social distancing,
Mhm.
the area surrounding Syracuse, there's plenty to do. That's outside, that's, whatever it might be. I mean, we would go skiing, we were going to dinner, we were doing all kinds of fun stuff. So like it's not all just work, you can have some fun while you're there too. And I mean, I made friendships that I still have to this day,
Mhm.
which is great. Like I've talked with Sabina and Wendy and
Mhm.
a lot of the people that I graduated with, I still keep in touch with.
Mhm. That's great.
Yeah.
So, but one habit that you picked up during that time, you haven't gotten rid of yet. Do I need to
That's true.
specify?
No, so I am still working remotely. And I think I said to Shri last time we were talking, it's like, I would be very happy if I never had to go back into an office again. I don't know. I mean, it's not for everybody. I found it to be great. I feel more productive at home. I still, in my current job, I do some traveling for work. We're in the client services business. So
Mhm.
I visit clients. We have internal things that I need to attend. So it's not just like me sitting in my cave 24/7. But
Thank God.
yeah, I do like it. We have a remote environment. I manage a team of people that are all remote, and I haven't run into any issues. I've got a 10-month-old daughter at home too. It allows me to be a little bit more present than I normally might have been. It's great. It works really well for me.
So you threw in my surprise question right there. You just alluded to it. That's your second job, or rather, I should say that's your first job, and this is your second job, being a dad. So
Yes.
in terms of work-life balance, having the flexibility of, remote work, being able to be in a location where you don't feel the need to go in hybrid into the office or, work that way. What what would you say is one of the challenges of that? Because where the lines can get blurry.
They do, yeah. And I mean, I think it kind of depends on the business you're in, the industry you're in. But so, for example, like I've got, my client that I'm on right now is in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
California.
Mhm.
I live in Syracuse, New York. So there's
Mhm.
a 3 hour time difference. Um, my day starts around, 10, 11 Eastern time typically. And then it goes until 8 9 p.m. ish, depending on what's going on. But the nature of our work, being consultants, I've got people pinging me, emailing me, calling me sort of around the clock. And especially since you're not there present, that is sort of a negative side effect of the remote environment. To your point, sometimes those lines do get blurred.
Mhm.
Um, but overall, like I think the flexibility that it offers me is like I wouldn't trade that for anything else. So, like I'd mentioned, we've got a baby at home, and because I work that Pacific schedule, my wife is able to work all morning while
Mhm.
I'm spending time with our daughter, and then we kind of
Mhm.
switch, when I go to work. And and it's great. And I think like one of a really good point to make there, and it's not MBA specific or anything, it's just like career
Mhm.
specific, is
Sure.
that there's there's so much opportunity out there, and there's especially since COVID, there's so many unique ways that we work now. I mean, you really do have the power to sort of very carefully curate a working environment that works really well for you and your family.
Mhm.
That was a priority for me. So like, I didn't just go and take the first job that came my way. I was hyper focused on finding the right solution to, what I felt like I needed.
Mhm.
Where I'm at now meets those needs, and it's a great fit. And I kind of plan on being here as long as they'll have me.
We want you to be there for as
Yeah.
long as you are able to be there, because we don't want you to leave SU
Mhm.
or the Syracuse area. So let's build on that and walk through your day, a typical day for us.
Sure. From
Yeah.
when I start work.
Yeah. Well, you're
Yeah.
doing two jobs, so let's
Yeah.
go through both.
So I mean, I don't know if anybody on the line has kids. I'm sure they can relate. But I like to exercise. I like to do a lot of, I like to work out. With a baby at home, if I want to do that, I have to get up, at like 4 a.m. to go to the gym. So right now, that's kind of what I'm doing. I wake up really early. I go exercise, come home, I make breakfast. And because of the off hours I work, I'm able to sit and enjoy a meal with my wife and daughter. I spend time with our baby for 3, 4 hours every morning, and then I go to work. Um,
Your idea of going to work is opening a door and stepping into the time portal, right? Into the world.
yes, going into my office upstairs,
Yeah.
which another thing to point out too, as far as remote goes, like remote work goes, is having a separate space has
Yeah.
been really helpful for me. So I've got a room, it's a dedicated office. I shut the door, and like when I'm in here, I'm working. When I'm not in here, I'm not. Even if I'm, downstairs in the kitchen or whatever, if I get a work call, like I come up here, I come
Mhm.
into the office, and like, because this is where I work.
Mhm.
Um, and I found that to help sort of.
It's a way of setting a mental boundary for yourself, isn't it? So that work
Yeah,
doesn't seep into family conversation at the dinner table, for instance.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's been great. And I mean, I do talk about work a lot at home, but it's just part of,
It's not all consuming though, when you have at least a certain type of a boundary,
yeah,
physical and mental.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
then, I mean, my day to day when I'm working, it's different every single day. It all depends on what's going on with the client, what's going on with the firm. No day is the same. We do a lot of firefighting in procurement and supply chain. It's very easy to point the finger at the supply chain organization, for whatever issue might be occurring. So we're kind of I wear a lot of different hats. Sometimes it's damage control, sometimes it's PR. Most of the time, it's strategic sourcing and category management, which is what I like to do. So that's
Mhm.
that's really good.
So what is your official title?
I'm a procurement consulting manager.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I lead.
You're not my grad student anymore.
No, I'm not. I'll always be your grad student, Shri. But yeah, I lead a delivery team of analysts and consultants. Our company has a lot of different service lines that we
Mhm.
offer. Everything from really targeted procurement advisory services all the way up to scaled managed services procurement organizations, with a bunch of stuff in between: data and digital services, staffing, that kind of stuff. So, but I manage a team of consultants. We work for a utility client in the state of California, primarily. Um, and no day is the same. We manage a spend portfolio that's quite large, and it's exciting. We go out there every day and we're fighting a good fight, trying to create value for our clients, whether that's process optimization, cost savings, continuous improvement, whatever it might be. It's always really interesting stuff.
Is there any particular piece of work? I know you talked about like everything related to supply chain, like speaks to you and you love doing it, but is there any particular type of, functional aspect of your job that you really, really enjoy? Like
Yeah,
mucking around in data, or is it mucking
I
around?
talk about this with my people managers too. I think there's two things that I enjoy most, and they're totally opposite roles.
Okay.
What in the position I'm at now, as a consulting manager, a delivery lead, the one thing I don't really get a ton of opportunity to do anymore is exactly what you said, and it's really like dig into the weeds of like data analysis and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I have a team of people who do that for me. But it's something I really enjoy, and at one point in my tenure, I was very good at. But it's hard to keep those skills sharp.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the number one part of my job that really sort of excites me and gets me up every morning is the people management piece. So, it's the one thing, and I always kind of say this. So like supply chain, procurement and supply chain is it's not something that I'm passionate about. It's something that I find interesting and I happen to be pretty good at. The thing that I am passionate about is managing my team, helping them work through issues, helping them, grow in their own career paths themselves and figure out, ways to creatively solve our clients' problems. That's the piece that really excites me. And it's a lot more work than it sounds. I spend probably 50-60% of my time really just supporting my team, providing general oversight, as opposed to like actually doing my own work and delivering for our clients. So there's a balance you have to strike. Once you reach a certain level, it becomes difficult to kind of manage all that, because you are expected to kind of have this, a full plate of projects and whatever you're working on yourself, while simultaneously you're responsible for the overall success of your team. But it's that piece that really I'm passionate about.
That's great. So you've been in this role or with this company for how long now? Since
A little over 3
since
years.
almost 5 years, right?
A little over 3 years. So coming out of, I actually started at a different company
Oh, I see. Okay.
right out of the MBA, working in a procurement capacity at another local organization, actually. The place I'm at now, I had applied to early in my MBA, and I really, really liked them. Like I knew that's where I wanted to be. But they kind of went into like a hiring freeze. It didn't end up working out. So I took this other job, which was a fantastic role as well. I mean, I learned a lot. I had a great time. But as soon as I saw that they were hiring again, I reached out to a few of the people I connected with previously on LinkedIn, and the whole thing kind of unraveled within probably a month. And 2 weeks later, I was starting at the new role. So I started as a consultant. I'm a senior, or I'm a manager now, so I was able to kind of work my way up the chain pretty quickly. Still a lot of room to grow, but I'm loving every minute of it.
Fantastic. So let's go to some relevant related, but not your professional life. I think we got enough of that. So let's see the other side of Jim Coleman. You played music?
Yeah, I do.
What do you play?
I don't know if you can see it. You probably can't see it on the camera right now, but I've got my guitars hanging on the wall. I've got a mic and amplifier set up behind me here. My brother and I have been writing and recording music for a very long time. So it's a hobby. It's really nothing more than that. But we do enjoy it. We are published. We are on Spotify and Apple Music. I'm not going to disclose those details right now, but I've been doing it since I was a kid. And it's a good way to kind of disconnect from everything else and just, kind of focus on something that's nothing but, pleasurable.
That explains why you didn't stick with that degree.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
would have taken that level of creative enjoyment for you
Yeah,
and
maybe.
made it
Yeah.
into something more structured,
Yeah.
whereas what you seem to be gravitating towards in the music is more like just we do it for fun. I'm not trying to make a business out of it and make
Yeah,
a career out of it.
it's an escape. That's really what it is for me. So
That's great. So, I will make sure I update our team internally because you're going to come play for us during orientation, right? I just
sure.
convinced one of the professors yesterday, who you probably have taken classes with or have met, John Torrance, because he plays the saxophone. So I think we're forming a Whitman band.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. So some general advice that you would like to give to anybody who's considering doing an advanced degree and
Mhm.
specifically related to business, but keeping in mind with respect to your particular field, like how is it growing? Is it worth going doing an MBA? What's some general advice you would give?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say is like you need to put a lot of work and thought into what your plan is. My honest opinion is that the MBA or the master's would be beneficial no matter what. That's, my experience.
Mhm.
But you take something like supply chain management. That is a very broad categorization of roles and responsibilities and work functions and whatever it might be. And it applies to every single industry there is. So I think it would benefit you to sit down and make sure you're kind of developing a pretty solid understanding of what the opportunities are within that's whether it's supply chain, whether it's finance, whether it's whatever, and it's not so much to just say like, oh, I want to go work in the chemical industry or whatever. It's like, well, what do you want to do?
Mhm.
Where do you want to be in 10 years? And like what are the specific steps you're going to take to get there? Like you need a strategy um to sort of hold yourself accountable and kind of make sure you're working towards that specific goal. So like that's something that I did a lot of. We were kind of talking about it earlier. So like, I keep saying like squeeze all the value out of the program. Well, you can't do that unless you know like what
Mhm.
you're hoping to achieve.
Mhm.
So have a plan. That plan can change. That's okay. But you want to be working towards something. You don't want to graduate with your MBA and then be left thinking, okay, great. Now what? Um, it's 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 definitely something you want to think about.
Yeah, great. Okay, so I think we have a bunch of questions. So, Federica, you want
Yes.
to take us
Hello
through?
again, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank our panelists for the accurate presentation and for these useful testimonials from James. I see that we have lots of questions, so I'm going to start in reading.
Okay.
So the first one is the GMAT or GRE required for admission, and can it be waived under certain conditions?
Yes. So currently, the website, which I will link in the chat box in a minute, we do offer, we do not require the GMAT or the GRE. We recommend strongly that you take it. So it's not required for application or for admission, but it would be a benefit if you did take it. Yeah.
Perfect. And another one is, how long does it usually take to get a student visa after being admitted? Does the university help with that process?
So there are multiple steps that are involved. So I'm not actually going to go into details on that here in the interest of time. And also because a student first needs to get admitted before they can go through the rest of the processes that are that relate to getting the documentation that would make them eligible to apply for a student visa. So, and I'm not a representative of the US consulate. What I can give is maybe a link that you could share with the candidates later about visiting either the consular page on in your own country, or visit the Education USA advisors in your particular country to give you some guidance about that.
Yeah, of course. And hi, James. What's one thing about the program that really exceeded your expectations? Something you weren't anticipating but really appreciated?
That's a great question. I kind of touched on this earlier, but the number one thing for me is how much Whitman was willing to work with me. So I talked a lot about like me sort of manipulating, the program to sort of meet my needs and that sort of thing.
I would say customizing rather than manipulating.
Let's put it that customizing.
We
Customizing
didn't hate you for doing what you wanted to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think, I felt supported 100% of the way, by not just the faculty, but like the administration too. So, all the way up to Alex McKelvey and everybody, they were super interested in why I was there, what I wanted to do. And I felt listened to and heard on every sort of thought that I had or idea or recommendation, and they were very much willing to work with me to make that happen for me, which is fantastic.
Yeah, perfect. So next question is, can you tell us more about the professors? Are they approachable and supportive outside of the class?
Yes. Yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely. So, I built really solid relationships with all of my professors. Some of them I've stayed in touch with even today. Outside of the classroom, yes, very willing to help if you're struggling with the curriculum, or if you just kind of want to share experiences and that sort of thing. I remember I had one professor, Pat Penfield, Shri, who, I was talking to him a lot about the job that I had, and he was super interested in that, and he wanted to work that into the course that he was teaching.
Oh, nice.
So he was giving me a platform to come and kind of share what I'm doing, at my job every day in the classroom. And so like things like that were really cool. But every single professor there was very approachable and very much willing to help. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Because this is so important. So your testimonials shows that professor are great. So.
And you're hearing it from a former student, not from the representative, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I can say it, but then it's a different resonance when you hear
a different point of view. Yeah,
student. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
And another one that is similar to the first one is, let me know what is the criteria to get admission and how much scholarship they offer.
Okay, so all of this information is available on the website. So I think if you were to potentially go to, I don't know, Carolina, can you grab the handle?
Yeah.
Whitman.syracuse.edu is the generic website for our Whitman School of Management. And then you can look in under the graduate tab, and you will see the list of all our MBA and MS programs that we offer. And based on which program specification you are interested in, you can look at the application requirements and the admissions criteria in there. Every program has this merit scholarship offering. So we offer a merit scholarship based on the overall merit of your candidacy. It's not a need-based scholarship, it's a merit-based scholarship. And typically every admitted candidate receives a scholarship award. How much will depend on, again, the merit of your candidacy, but you do not get, obviously, nobody's getting a free lunch, as we like to say. But it is, I would say, among the business schools in general, I'm not going to obviously name names or anything, but then there is a trend among some business schools where if you are an MBA student, you could get a scholarship award. But if you're a specialized master's student, you're usually not offered an award. And I've been at Whitman since 2014, and I've seen every dean who's come in has supported the Merit Scholarship Award across all graduate programs, both for specialized masters and the MBA.
Okay, perfect. So if everyone needs it in the chat, Carolina just drop the link. Exactly. Yeah. So another one is, hi, Shri and James. Is it possible to switch between online and on-campus options during the program, especially for the MBA?
So just to clarify, James was in a precarious situation, hopefully one-off during the pandemic when he had already started the program. And that's why we pivoted online. But we do offer a specific online MBA as well. And so I would say that would be an offline discussion because it might take a little longer, but just very quickly, we would not advise joining an online program and trying to switch into an on-campus program, because there are a lot of, especially if you're an international student, there are a lot of, regulations with visas that apply towards that. There are also regulations with respect to the way the courses are structured. The online program could be a quarter-based program, whereas the term for the full-time is a semester term. So switching between the two would be very complex, and usually it's not allowed.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
I would say look through the website, and then if you have additional questions, you can reach out separately to schedule a meeting with me.
Perfect. And hello, how hands-on are the courses? Are there real business cases or consulting project involved?
That's for you.
So the question is in the coursework, are there
courses.
Business cases? The answer is yes. Every single, I want to say, if not every class, almost every class incorporates case study into it. Some of them are very heavily case study. Some of them are exclusively case study. So the short answer is yes, and I think it kind of depends on what the subject matter of the course is. There are there are some very specific courses, at least I remember, that were consulting focused, and you'd actually be deployed on a project to kind of produce some sort of deliverable for a participating organization. But in general, yes, the case studies are a pretty critical part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
Okay. And another one for James. How did you balance private life and life as a student?
I was kind of an interesting case for that, I guess. I went into it with the mindset of like, I'm going to be a workhorse, and that's really what I did. I had very long days for those 2 years. But a part of that is because I was working 40 hours a week at a job. I didn't have to do that. It was all to supplement my education. But I mean, in general, the city of Syracuse is great. There's a lot to do. you know, hiking, skiing, ton of great restaurants, all the stuff you'd expect to see in any city. There's plenty to keep yourself occupied outside of the classroom.
We
and
have
just
a music scene as well.
yeah, great music scene. Went to a lot of shows. So in that, anywhere from like Ithaca to Rochester, there's a ton of really cool venues. And then just make friends. Your MBA cohort, they're all going through the same thing you are. I made a lot of really great friendships, and we were able to hang out, and I still talk to a lot of them today.
Yeah. So the last one is there an age limit to be admitted?
No. It threw me off for a second. It's more about your how well you meet the admissions criteria. So, for instance, if you do not have an undergraduate degree because you have not gone through formal education, then that could be a limiting factor, because we do require an undergraduate degree in order to then apply for an advanced degree. But we do not limit any candidate because of age.
Perfect. So anyone can be admitted. So
yes, as long as you meet the rest of the admissions criteria.
Perfect. And the last one is you mentioned you were on a student organization, so the life outside the classroom is active. Did you find some good mates, even if everything was online during COVID?
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. And I mean, especially like during COVID, we found ways to entertain ourselves. Like we went on ski trips, we went hiking, we went, one of my friends was really into mountain biking. We were going mountain biking like every other weekend. And the Syracuse is a great place to do all that stuff. So yes, I made a lot of really good friends. We had a bunch of fun outside of the classroom. Plenty to do.
Perfect. So good to know for everyone who want to join Syracuse University. So first of all, I want to thank you again, to thank our fantastic guests for this interesting debate, and thank everyone who has joined us and make those questions. I'd like to remind everyone interested in receiving a certificate of attendance by Weuni that you can click in the link in the chat and request it. So before we say goodbye, I'd like to ask our panelists if they would like to leave our participant with a message.
Jimmy?
Syracuse.
Okay. Syracuse.
So, yeah, it's as we say at Whitman, it's be orange, be Whitman.
Perfect.
So we say, and then the other thing we say, what's that, Jimmy? We bleed orange, right?
We do bleed orange, yes.
Yeah. So check us out. I mean, if it may initially, because we are talking about the business school, you might think this is the only thing that is available at Syracuse University, but there are a lot of other programs. Find your fit, and then maybe it's business, maybe it's something else, but do reach out, and we would love to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you again. And thank you to our speakers and everyone who connected with us today. And I hope you to see you again in the next webinar organized by Weuni. So bye everyone, and have a nice day.